I'm delighted to say we're joined by someone who knew him very well. Fellow former England manager Roy Hodgson joins us on the phone now. Firstly, so Roy, so many people paying some really lovely tributes to Sven, and you have known him for a very long time, so no doubt a very sad day for you as well.
Yes, it is. I'm certain all the tributes have been saying the right things because they were only right things to say about Sven. We go back, of course, to the mid-70s when I moved to Sweden. Got to know him very well, and our paths crossed so many times after that, and we obviously became close as well. And I've got so many memories of him. And even though we, I suppose, knew that this day was one day going to arrive, it doesn't help when the day does arrive and you realise that you have lost someone as important to you in your life and important to the moment.
Yeah, it's just a very tricky line actually at the moment, Roy, so I'm struggling to hear you a little bit there. But just tell me about your history with Sven then, because as you were saying there, you came across Sven during your early days. I think you've known him since 1976.
Yes, I moved to Sweden in 1976. He took over in Gothenburg. I think he was either 77 or 78. We had enormous rivalry at that time between Gothenburg and Halmstad, where I was coaching. And then, of course, I followed him. After that, we met again many times in Italy. I visited him in Rome and in Florence. I did a coaching course with him and toured Greece in Portugal when he was there and visited him. And then, of course, we met up a little bit later, and I went to Inter, and we played against each other when he was at Sampdoria, and finally, of course, back in England when he was England manager, and later when he was at Leicester manager, and I played against him with Fulham. So many, many memories of times together, but they're not important those times really. The important thing is that he's being remembered as he should be. I mentioned earlier that people talk about him being a gentleman and a nice guy, which of course he was, but it shouldn't be forgotten that he was an extremely good coach. An extremely good coach, an extremely good manager, a very good man manager, very intelligent, and really and truly one of the top people, if you like, in the game of football during my time in it as a coach, that's for sure.
Yeah, Roy, I've had the pleasure of sitting and speaking to you about your career, and I had a similar chance with Sven-Göran Eriksson as well. You talk about your careers and how they sort of intertwined along the way. Just tell us what made him, you're both very much gentlemen of the game as well. What made him so successful as a coach? Because it was arguably a risk for England to take him in 2000, but he came with this glittering CV, didn't he?
Yes, and I think the people who appointed him did their homework extremely well because they wanted someone who was going to play the right sort of football, but most importantly of all, someone who was a good man manager. There was a good squad of players at that time, but good squads of players need good management because good players require people to understand them and treat them in the right way. And Sven had that golden touch, I think, when it came to man management. But it shouldn't be forgotten either that, you know, alongside Bobby Houghton and myself and toured Greece, there's no doubt that Swedish football owes such a big debt, if you like, in terms of the way the game has gone since those mid-70s. And Sven, of course, most important of all, more so than Bob and I, because he was Swedish, and of course the Swedes were crying out for someone who was their own to come with the style of football which would be successful.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that in terms of we were speaking to a Swedish journalist earlier who was touching upon that. How did you feel, Roy, as an Englishman, when England appointed Sven as a manager?
Well, I thought it was a very, very good decision. I mean, I don't know what the rivals for the post were at the time. I suppose if I thought hard enough, I could probably remember a few names. Don't forget, I wasn't working in England at the time. Media debate, but I just thought that when I saw he got the job, I thought, well, they've got a good guy there, that's for sure, and there's no doubt he will organise the team, and not only will he organise them, he'll be able to deal with the quality of players that he'll be required to deal with and manage them in the right way to get the best out of them. And I think that's what he did. you know, he wasn't lucky with the final results like so many England managers have not been, certainly around that era. But there's no doubt, I'm sure you're speaking to players who worked with him at England in that time, and I would be extremely surprised if they're not saying how much they liked him and how good they thought he was.
Yeah, I mean, the LMA in their tribute noted that England were ranked 17th in the world when he took over, and he left them in 4th place. You know how hard the job is. Do you feel that he was underappreciated at times?
I think all England managers are underappreciated at times. I think that is the territory, if you like, and I think it will continue to be the territory. I'm afraid the best tributes come after your time at the helm there. But the important thing is that the tributes that come are honest ones and heartfelt ones, and I don't think the 1 minute there's going to be anyone around that time. Well, I have good things to say about him because that's what he was like. He's an easy man to have good things to say about because he was such a good guy. And most importantly of all, if you love football and you love football management, he was one of the top people. So if you were lucky enough to be as close to him as I was and share moments, professional moments together, they're moments we will always treasure and I will always respect.
Yeah. In terms of the press, how do you think he handled them? Because you know what, and I've got to put myself in there, we can be like. Do you think he got them right? Because he got them on side at times, didn't he?
Well, he had a good personality, and I think that, you know, if you've got a decent personality and that the people interviewing, even if they're wanting to be critical, can see the human side and can see maybe that there's a little bit more to you than just 90 minutes football every week, then I think it is easy enough to get press on your side. But I must reiterate, I wasn't in England during the time when no doubt the press were having a field day at his expense. So I was spared that, and I expect he would have liked to have been spared it too in many ways. But having said that, it hasn't made even the slightest indentation on his reputation, on the respect and love people have for him, and that's obviously pouring out at the moment in all the tributes that you're receiving. And I'm grateful to be given the chance to at least add my voice to those tributes, even if I don't have probably anything much to say that hasn't been said already.
No, well, it's always lovely to hear from you, Roy. Just a couple of more questions, Roy. Have you remained in contact with him in recent years? Did you have a few chats with him?
Yes. Funnily enough, the last one was when I found out about his cancer diagnosis when he made it public. You know, it was terminal, and I spoke to him then on the telephone. And the most amazing thing was that it's very typical of the man. I think it says so much about him. I was in Liverpool preparing for a game, and contacted him. I'd contacted him earlier and left a message, and he rang back. So the phone call came on the day of the game, and the most amazing thing, I was trying to find things to say that would be good for him to hear, and all he wanted to talk about was Crystal Palace and how we were doing. But I mean, that was Sven, really. I dreaded the conversation in a way, how hard it is when you've had a friend and you hear that he's been diagnosed with terminal cancer. What do you say? What words do you find? He made the conversation very simple by being himself, as if we'd only partied a week or two before. And I think, if anything, that says more about him than anything else I could say. I put the phone down feeling very good. My respect, which was already enormous, has grown even greater.
Yeah, so many people are saying the words dignity, and he had it in spades, didn't he? Certainly, right through to the end. Just finally, Roy, is there a memory, a specific memory? So many people are talking about red wine and things like that. Is there a specific memory that you'll have of Sven that you'll treasure?
Well, I suppose there's two. I mean, one were the Titanic tennis matches that we had, one in his house in Cascais and one at a local tennis club to me in Malmö a few years later, or a year or two later. How hard fought those battles were between obviously two quite competitive people. Neither of us wanted to lose, and in fact, we virtually got carried off the court. But of course, the other one I remember, it's an unfortunate one for Sven, but it was the Leicester City game when Fulham, of course, survived. Another one in Sampdoria, where Mancini, whom I know he speaks very highly of, got fouled by a goalkeeper, an ex-Sampdoria player, who left him with a penalty. And he left the field of play for 2 minutes, and Sven, his coaching staff, had to work hard to try and persuade him to go back on the pitch. So there's millions and millions of memories like that. The offside goal we got given when I was at Harmstead, when we won the championship in '79, when they were in second place and could easily have overtaken us. A back pass to the goalkeeper was intercepted by a Gothenburg player, and they scored, and the referee gave it offside. So all those memories, I suppose, really, which, but I mean, the red wine and that bit, that's of lesser consequence. I mean, I just remember how good he was with his team, and how well organised they always were, and how adept he was at taking even the very best quality players in Italy, in England, in Portugal, and moulding them into a team. And that's never easy to do. And that's what he was very good at. So apart from being a gentleman, apart from being a top-class person, apart from having a good personality and a lot of laugh, a lot of humour, one shouldn't forget that most of all, he was a top-class footballer. He was football through and through.
A lovely tribute from you, and always lovely to speak to you, Roy. Take care.
Thanks, Vicky.